ask my colleagues. Thank you. Oh, wait, I have to have my mic so that everybody can hear me. Okay. All right. Now you can hear me, right? Excellent. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library, where you currently are. And I'm really thrilled to be here for our Cozy Mystery Mini Fest. I had to practice that, and I can't say 3 times fast. But I'm really happy to be here because I think cozy mysteries are perfect for the summer, and they're perfect for any time of the year, like the winter. We have a fire blazing, whatever. So we have Leslie Meier, Barbara Ross, Maddie Day, also known as Edith Maxwell, and Barbara Wallace here with us. Before I get to them, though, I would like to thank the Friends of the Ashland Public Library who support all of our programming and, in fact, put out snacks for you if you need something during the 3 hours that we're here. I would also like to let you know that Aesop's Fables is out there. They're a wonderful independent bookstore out of Holliston, and they are providing books for our authors. So we make sure to buy, and then you can have them signed because signed books are gold. Somebody someday is going to actually put them in, like, you know, the mint or something, and they're going to be gold. And you'll all be like, oh, I heard it from Mina. Awesome. Some of you are going to be like my best friends here. Okay, so because I'm terrible at introductions, I'm actually going to have the authors introduce themselves. But I will tell you that I only decided on the topic of this discussion yesterday. So it's going to be the essential elements, the no-nos, and the appeal of cozy mysteries. We'll get into that. I have questions. You're welcome to ask questions. But in the meantime, let's hear about our authors first. So Leslie, we're going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your latest book.
Okay, well,
It's on, please.
oh.
It's on.
It's on, okay. I really hate these. You know, I have to admit, I was brought up really to not talk about myself. So this is a little hard for me. I started writing back around 1990, I think, was when I sold my first book. And I've been writing a series, a cozy mystery series about a woman who's a part-time reporter and a busy mom lives in a coastal, quaint coastal town, Tinkers Cove, Maine. And it started with one book, and now I've done over 30. So it's just kept going, which is nice. In my real life, I'm a grandmother. I have 5 grandkids. I divide my time between Cape Cod, where this summer I'm running a granny camp for 2 of my two an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. And the 11-year-old is attempting stardom. They go to a little thing called Harwich Junior Theater, and Adam is taken on this role. He's the jester. He goes out in the beginning of every show and introduces the show, and stays around and sort of glad hands the people and the people who come. So it's he's quite excited about that. And Stella is 8, and she's just 8. She's difficult, and a little bit of a prima donna. And then when I'm not there, I'm in Braintree, which is not too far from here. And I write and I garden. I'm particularly angry with my son-in-law because he hasn't kept the gate closed and something's been eating my dahlias. So, you know,
I'm guessing that'll be in a book someday.
And although he should be nameless, the villager.
He'll be killed off page.
And it looks like I have a really promising crop of early girl tomatoes. So,
thank you, Leslie.
Hi, my name is Barbara Ross. I write the main Clam Bake Mystery series. What Leslie didn't say is that because she has 30 books or 30 years?
30 books.
30 books. You get to watch her character go from being a young mother to a grandmother, which is a really sort of satisfying thing. Or I love series, so I find it very satisfying. The 11th main Clam Bake Mystery, Hidden Beneath, just came out at end of June. And I handed in the 12th on July 3rd. Reasoning that anything due on Saturday, July 1st was really due Monday morning. So, you know, I got up early and pressed that send button. So the 12th is now with our editor. And interestingly, all three of us have the same editor. So that's something we can chat about. And then Leslie and I, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, have also collaborated with a third author, Lee Hollis, on a series of holiday themed novellas, and I'm sure we'll talk about holiday themes at some point too.
And what,
Thank you.
yeah, what Barb didn't mention is that she and I are members of a 6-person blog, The Wicked Authors, that's been going for over 10 years. All fabulous authors, so you should check us out. We have posts up every weekday. So I'm Maddie Day, also known as Edith Maxwell, which is my actual name, no big secret. I currently write 3 cozy mystery series. The Country Store Mysteries, which are set in Southern Indiana in a country store breakfast and lunch restaurant. Let's see, Four-Leaf Cleaver is the most recent of that. St. Patrick's Day theme, St. Patrick's Day cooking competition in Robbie Jordan's store. And that's book 11. Book 12, Deep Fried Death will be out at the end of December. Features an outhouse race, which is a real thing in Brown County, Indiana, and Nashville, Indiana, the county seat. I also write the Cozy Capers book group mysteries, which take place in a fictional town in Cape Cod, vaguely in the West Falmouth area. Although if you actually looked, there's no place for another town, but don't look that closely at the map. And that has Mac Almeida. She runs a bike shop, Mac's Bikes Rental, Retail, and Repair, and is part of the Cozy Capers book group, which only reads cozy mysteries. And those are her cohort for solving crimes. And book 5, Murder at a Cape Bookstore, will be out a month from now. And I have turned in Murder at the Rusty Anchor, which is book 6, which is the pub in town. Then I have the brand new C.C. Barton Mysteries. And this is an advanced copy that somebody today is going to win. C.C. Barton is a widow in her 40s who lives in the Alexander Valley. She moves to the Alexander Valley, which is a wine country north of San Francisco. It's Napa's less known little sister, but it's a much better wine producing region. And her twin sister, Allie, lives in town, and Allie's twin sons. And Cece manages a wine bar. And now she solves murders. And I'm a native Californian. I'm a 4th-generation Californian on my mother's side, and I am so happy to finally write a series set in my home state. I am expecting my first grandchild in January. And I also have a very promising crop of gold cherry tomatoes coming along in my garden, and I live in the top right corner of Massachusetts in Amesbury, next to Newburyport.
And then there's me. I'm Barbara Wallace. I live 2 towns over in Medway, and I'm sort of the newcomer of the group. I came from the romance industry. I wrote 24 books for Mills & Boon and Harlequin Romance before switching over and deciding I wanted to do cozy mysteries, which we're going to talk about rules you should break, which I broke, I think, most of them. So because it's a labor of love. It's the Sadie McIntyre Mysteries. It's set in a small town that is not Medway, and just seems like it's a leafy suburb like that. And it involves the secrets that are in a small town that behind closed doors that you don't know about, like pot growing and swingers clubs and things like that. Wait a minute.
No, we're all friends here. I'll tell you, I live in Medway and I've never seen any.
I'll tell you how you find them.
Okay.
Anyways, again, I've got Edith Beat because my first grandchild's due in 4 weeks. And if you want to hear all about my son, grandson, and daughter-in-law, I'd be glad to brag about them. Other than that, I don't garden. And
Me neither.
okay, so the barbers don't garden, right? And took a break off. I do have another cozy coming out in the fall of 2023. There was a short break. I decided to write an historical fiction because I'm the girl who can't seem to decide on a genre. But the first Dates Are Fatal will be coming out in fall of 2023.
Awesome.
I did forget to mention that I have a 7-book historical mystery series, Quaker Midwife Mysteries under Edith Maxwell. Oh, you got my hand out there. Thank you.
Historical fiction.
They are.
So cool. All right, so I'm gonna get right into this because I know there's a lot to dig into and I have a wide topic. So I'd really like to know, Leslie, let's start with you about what is one thing that is an absolute essential for you in a cozy mystery when you're writing? Not for the genre, but for you.
Well, actually, for me. I have to say 2 things. Okay, one, I think is the whole premise of a cozy mystery is the community. I think you have to have a tight community, and something happens that threatens the community, and that for me is very important. But I also do like to sometimes, my editor says I kind of push the boundaries a little bit, and I will also kind of bring in social issues and things that I'm feeling strongly about at the moment. I try not to be preachy. I try to be neutral, but I do bring up sometimes some controversial things, and I'm going to keep doing it. He says it's okay.
I'm gonna get back to the community thing because I always wonder about that because it's a tight community, but yet someone is gonna die. Right? Okay, all right, we'll get back to that. Barbara.
For me, the absolute necessity is a reason for the sleuth to investigate. So cozy mysteries typically, exceptions to every rule, feature amateur sleuths. So they have another job. And any one of us, were we to stumble over a body, would call 911 and cry until the police arrived and leave as quickly as possible when they let us go. So for me, finding that reason, that unique piece of knowledge, that unique circumstance, that unique whatever that causes the sleuth to be proactive. When people give me manuscripts to critique, the most common error I see is sleuths who kind of bumble around and happen to overhear conversations, but they're not driving the investigation, which means they're not driving the narrative. So for both fictional reasons and plot reasons, I really am looking for that reason my sleuth is investigating.
Oh, I'll just switch so you can catch your breath. You're okay. Yeah, but for me, I would say both of those things, but it's the characters. If you're gonna read this character for 3, 5, 7, 12 books, you have to really like the character. So as an author, I have to really like the characters that they're gonna be around and really love their byplay and want them to be part of my life, so that you want them to be part of yours and make them as 3-dimensional as possible. If they're not fully fleshed out or not likable, then the book's not going to work, no matter how good the mystery is, because you're going to be turned off by the detective or the amateur detective.
Barb, characters are in all books, right? So what about your characters make it a cozy mystery or a cozy book?
Well, she's an amateur detective.
Okay.
The same thing. And it is in a small community where you have small town, and she stumbles upon things, but again, it's the same thing. She's related to all the mysteries that take place. She has a reason for investigating that have to do with her personal life or her friends. You want to tie it in like that. So that's what makes it cozy for me.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I think to get back to the community, and by the way, I'm perfectly healthy. I just have this cough that rises up sometimes. The community is so important, and they're they're the recurring characters, whether it's the regulars in the country store or restaurant. Whichever group it is in the cozy. And they're the reasons, because the protagonist has a direct relationship with them, that she has a very good reason to work on that. But also with long running series, with my country stores now becoming a very, long running series, not 30 books yet, but getting up to 12 and 13 is. I need to find, I need to keep my, especially my protagonist, changing in some way, not stagnant. I mean, her personal life has changed in various ways over the series. In the book, it's coming out in, well, I don't want to spoil it, never mind. Her personal life continues to evolve. And that's important to keep me interested in writing it, right? As well as readers interested in reading it. I don't want you to read the same book every time, right? Obviously, the situation of the murder changes, and the suspects, and the villain, and the victim. But it's more the recurring characters, and especially the protagonist there has to be something new happening in that particular book that ties in with all the books before.
Right. But we're gonna go back to you and then we'll go around again, about what you said about if it was us, we would be crying, calling the cops, in a puddle and, in the fetal position when they get there. So what about your characters makes them want to solve the mystery? And is it because you somehow make the police seem incompetent in that community?
What an excellent question. So
I didn't even write that one down.
that is, so if you kind of look at the history of cozy mysteries, and you go back to the golden age in England, it is very frequent that the reason the amateur is so smart is because they are an upper class Englishman or woman, and the cops, if you watch these shows on TV, speak in accents where you have to turn the captions on. So that is very much a trope. I've never subscribed to that in my particular series. I just have not found, realizing that I'm sitting in a very privileged position as an old white lady, I have just not found the police in my little Maine town to be anything but supportive, cooperative, etc. And in Maine, only Portland and Bangor have, which is where my series is set, have detectives on their police forces. So it's the state police, and I have not found them in any dealings to be incompetent or idiots. So what I try to do is to have my sleuth, by virtue of either her circumstances or by virtue of her being embedded in the community, have unique knowledge that it would take the cops forever to get, or to have witnesses more comfortable approaching her now that she's, after 12 books and 5 novellas, she's developed a reputation, obviously, by this point. So I try to always make it kind of sideways and not make my police characters dumb.
Well, I live in Massachusetts, where the police have a somewhat different reputation.
Maybe we shouldn't record this.
In some towns,
Some fiction, Leslie.
I am so, and this is, but that has somewhat colored my my approach. And as much as I love Barney Culpepper, and he is a really good cop and stuff, he's not the brightest bulb. And I have a lovely female Officer Sally, who is just adorable and has become Lucy's little into the police department. But I have touched on police corruption in some of my books, and often the reason that the wrong person is fingered for the crime or something is basically because it's to do with a little bit of possible, maybe police corruption.
I was kind of like joking about like, you know, the reality versus fiction, but I think that that's true, like that it makes sense that there would be some element of that in some books to push the sleuth to do what they do. That totally makes sense.
And it's also handy, if the police, at least maybe at the beginning of the series, somebody in the department is furious that this amateur is hanging around and poking her nose in and getting in trouble and then coming up with answers. Like even if they're competent, they can be perfectly competent and they can still be angry
And wrong.
and wrong.
Yeah.
At this amateur. And so they're a great, you can have a character who's a great antagonist police officer who just keeps saying, which like the state police officer in like Cape Cod series. I mean, he and Mac become friends, but he says, what was it about staying out of trouble? You didn't listen to the last case. Like, there they go again, the cozy capers.
The cozy papers, I like that.
They're on Cape Cod,
Yeah.
whatever. So that's a good role because you don't want everything to go smoothly at all for your protagonist, right? You need prickles and thorns in the way.
And then there's me. I think it's gonna be the theme. I should point out that when my police officer is very smart, looks like Daniel Craig, is kind of the pseudo love interest for Sadie. Her son is on the force. At the time I started writing this, my son was a criminal justice major. So, and he was dating a state trooper. So it is, the police are presented a little bit differently for me. It's not so much that he's very smart. He works with her. It's more a case of her sticking her nose in a little too far most of the time. She has the first book, she has a secret that she's trying to hide from the police. So she's driven to solve the mystery before he does, because otherwise he's gonna find out what the secret is. And she doesn't want anyone to know. And I can't spoil that because it's the last page of the book. So it's a lot more, but he's spending more and more time hanging out with her and her friend, and now kind of expecting them to fill him in on all the small town gossip because he's new in town and doesn't get it. So he's reluctantly including her more investigations. So it's not so much antagonistic as just he's amused by her.
Maddie, I want to go back to you a bit. Well, maybe it's a little slightly different question, but like for like thrillers and, you know, hardcore mysteries, it's obvious why the person becomes a sleuth. They are, you know, they're in the ex-military, or they're being, you know, targeted because they're in the CIA or whatever. So what characteristics does your sleuth have that makes them the perfect person to do the sleuthing? Like Nancy Drew.
Well, Mac Almeida in the Cozy Capers series, she is she's like way beyond a neat freak. She's really obsessed with everything being in order, and she has an opening checklist for her store. She's got a closing checklist for her store. She makes sure all the steps are followed. In the first few books in the series, she lives in a tiny house, so everything's in its place. It's like living on a boat, you know, everything has to be put away or it's a big mess. And so she doesn't like messy situations. And when someone who's close to her in the first book, it's her brother who's suspected of the murder. And Mac herself actually trips over the body on the path in a really foggy night, on her way home from book group. And so like, and you're not supposed to trip over the body, but whatever, she trips over the body. So she's driven to solve this thing and tidy it all up and make everything neat and the way it should be again. Mm-hmm. And it makes her a good bike mechanic. You know, it makes her a good business owner, and it also makes her a good amateur sleuth.
I love that. Thank you. Barbara, what about you? What's the same question?
So I think my sleuth, Julia Snowden, in the main Clambake mysteries, has an overriding curiosity. Curiosity about other humans and what drives them and why they do what they do. She comes to her small town in Maine to save her family's failing clam bake business. And she comes from 8 years in venture capital, where researching the heck out of things is an absolute necessity. So she comes with that background. And as Edith said, or Maddie, as Maddie said, I call her Edith, that desire for closure and answers, I think, is a human being thing. I think it's a reason that people who like these mysteries like them, because so much of life, the questions never get answered, and there's never that kind of solution. So I think a drive for that is another personal trait of my sleuth.
Thank you.
Well, Lucy's, well, I worked as a reporter on Cape Cod. I was just a small town, I just covered small towns. Nothing like Pulitzer Prize winning or anything like that, but there is, I think, even in the tiniest little dinky little newspaper office, there's a real belief in truth. You want to get to the truth. And if you make a mistake, you will print a correction. And I think that is the thing that really also drives Lucy, who happens to be a reporter. I think it's a really funny thing. And but you know, I see it all the time in the news, in our newspapers are failing, but there are people who really want to know what is really going on. And I think we have a real, we need to honor those people and accept, not everything they say is going to be right, but if it isn't right, and they will correct it. And I think there are things that are true and things that are not true. And that's I think what really drives Lucy. Plus the sort of a Calvinist stuff.
Just thrown in there. And here's you, Barb.
And then there's me. I feel like that's gonna be my tagline. No, in that case, Sadie is the widow of a police officer, so she is used to discussing cases. She kind of comes from that background. Like I said, her son is a cop, so she's driven. In her case, it's always personal. In the first book, it's self-preservation. In the second case, it's because a friend is accused and she's driven to protect him. And I think that one of her unique skills is because she's a real estate agent, and she's lived in this town forever, and she herself has this secret. She knows that nothing and no one is what they say they are. You know, she knows that everyone's got something they're hiding in a small town. And so she's open to, when she looks at things, saying, okay, this is not what it seems. And I think that drives her very quickly into wanting to solve it, because even though it looks obvious, it's not, and she knows it.
I find it fascinating that a lot of your answers really do go back to the community, that, you know, they are connected and they want to know, and they have to know the truth and things like that. It's amazing. So Edith, I'm gonna start with you again, Maddie. Because you actually said something that is part of the topic, which is tripping over the body is a no-no in a cozy mystery. Is that, I mean, is that like a big no-no in a cozy mystery? What is a big no-no?
It's
For you?
you don't want to have too many coincidences. Like that's a major coincidence. Obviously, at some point they have to find out about the body or see it, come across it, or you know, in a cozy, excuse me. Typically, you don't see the person being killed. You don't see anybody being killed. You don't see anybody being seriously hurt. And so somebody's got to find the body. It could be a friend who calls the protagonist. But it's just because it's a coincidence. And that's, you just want to avoid too many coincidences. But you know, you can slide it, you can break the rules if you can make it work. If you can sell the book.
Okay, well, I'm gonna hand it back to Barb.
Should.
Big question.
Well, there's a lot of tropes. I will confess, I'm the anti-trope girl because my romance editor gave me many memos saying tropes are popular and you should actually use them. And I never did. And so for 24 books, I annoyed her. Hey, people, and you know what though, people like them because they were just slightly different. There are a lot of tropes about certain things, like again, no violence. People who read them don't want a lot of violence, they don't want a lot of rough language, they don't want sex. You shouldn't have any coincidences. You don't want someone to just randomly decide they're going to investigate. There should always be a driving point behind the narrative. Try to remember some of the other tropes that I got told to do. They're very, I shouldn't say, publishers like certain settings more than others. They love small towns, they love coffee shops, they have businesses. And I think that goes back to locations where community gathers. So you want to set, anything you set wants to be set someplace where community gathers.
Okay.
And I'm gonna pass it more to the people who actually follow the rules.
Leslie.
Oh,
I'm just like completely out of
Well,
order.
when I wrote my first book, I did not know about these rules.
Me neither.
I only knew two things about writing. One was write what you know. So I was a mother and a housewife, and so I made Lucy a mother and housewife. And the other was that a lot of books sell at Christmas time. So I made it a Christmas mystery. That's all I knew. So I did the terrible thing that you're not supposed to do, which was I killed a cat. Oddly, they let me get away with it. And that's how the book was published, with this cat getting killed. And I just really threw it in because I needed some tension. There was really no reason for it. As I said, I didn't know. But the book was getting
It's so random.
it wasn't murder of a cat. Yeah. Yeah,
It's very violent, Leslie.
well, but the story had sort of a happy ending, so I just
Come back.
very next thing. No, the cat is still gone. The cat is completely gone. The cat is completely gone. I when I was at the table, I saw that I knew this was happening. They reissued that first book, Mistletoe. It's called Mistletoe Murder. It used to be called Mail Order Murder, but now it's called Mistletoe Murder. And it was and Andrew told me it's 18th printing.
Oh, wow.
But now we took out that whole part about the cat. There's no yeah, and that was the condition. They would bring it out again, but I don't know what they were doing mindlessly all the time. But now I'm safe. I'm safe in cozy country.
So a serious no is to not kill it.
Yeah, that's not, you're not.
I mean, if you kill a moose.
And you don't hurt children, you never hurt children.
That's a writing rule across the board, pretty much. No killing pets, no killing dogs.
Oh, and my second one,
That's a US thing. The British will do things to children and cats.
Oh.
But it's not necessarily true that you can't kill pets or hurt pets and children in other genres. It happens.
Right.
But it seems like it's a particular no for a cozy mystery.
I got a very incensed email for using the expression "there's more than one way to skin a cat."
Really?
Yes, really a tear your face off. I am amazed that you blah blah.
So Barbara,
Yes.
you're the last one.
Okay.
About
So we haven't really, so for me, I like to play with the form, if you know what I mean. So we haven't really talked about what the rules are. So I'll take a crack, but other people may have different interpretations or want to chime in. So the way I see cozy mysteries is they are a subgenre of the traditional mystery. So it'll be a closed circle of victim, perpetrator, and suspects for the most part. which means it's never the CIA, it's never a Colombian drug cartel, it's never the Russian mafia. It's somebody that the victim knows in some way. They may not know they know them because secrets again, but it's someone known to the victim. So that's kind of the first structure. We talked about very often 90% of the time amateur sleuth, probably 75% of the time, maybe more female. Those are kind of the basics. And in a typical traditional mystery, you have a murder, you have plausible suspects, so you have more than one person who might have committed it, because otherwise it would be a very short book. And you have a perpetrator and you have a sleuth. So those elements are all there. So I like those elements. A friend of ours who writes cozy mysteries, Lucy Burdett, just wrote a women's fiction book club fiction book, and I'm like, where do you get a plot when you don't have those nice things to hang your story on?
A dead body.
Yeah, exactly. And a reason to go around asking people about their lives. Though I guess her character's a psychiatrist, so she has a reason. But I like to play with it within that. So I have one book where the body is dropped in the first sentence. I have another book where the body doesn't show up till 60% of the way through the story, though there's another mystery that I hope keeps you reading. I don't blather on for 60% of the book, or at least I hope I don't. I have one mystery where you never meet the perpetrator, which is supposedly a huge no-no. I've never gotten a single email about it. I have a novella and a book in a different series, the Jane Darrowfield series, where there's no murder. So for me, I like to play with it. But it's like writing a sonnet, right? You're gonna hit the basic rules of the genre, and you hope to meet reader expectations, but you get within that to fool around and try different things and be creative.
Thank you for that very full answer. I love it. Because then we get a full, spectrum.
Just, and one really important thing is that justice is restored to the community in the end. That's really important. Everything has to be tied up and the sort of the community equilibrium is restored. And that's key, I think, to cozies particularly. It's not just solving the murder, it's things are back in order. And cozies were very, very popular during the worst years of the pandemic.
Yes.
Our sales went up. Thank you very much. Thank you all. And I kept saying it's because the world is so scary and messy out there. And within this, and also I found writing them a great respite. I could control what goes on here. I couldn't control what was going outside my windows. I was barely supposed to go outside my windows. And people like to read those too, and that's excuse me, a really important aspect of it. Do you want to take questions?
Sure.
I just, because I think it's so important, and
Hold on 1 second. We're just gonna give you a mic so that everyone can hear.
now.
So do I, but apparently,
I read a lot of different types of books. I tend towards cozies, but the reason is I won't go to bed and read a scary thriller right before bed. I can go and read a cozy right before bed because in general they make you feel good. Because cozy's in the name, right? And I think in addition to all those things you've talked about that cozies typically have, it's just that sort of, I don't know, you feel good reading them, at least the ones that I read. And that's why it doesn't surprise me that they went up during the pandemic, is not only did it, is it that sense of order being restored, but just in general, they're not downers, tend to be uppers, and they include food, or they include different things that make us feel good and enrich our lives. So thank you to all of you for writing all these great books.
Thank you. I'm actually gonna push back about that a little bit, because in a long running cozy series, people continually die every book in their little community. So how can it feel safe to us to be in this community? Like I watched with Jessica Fletcher or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, I do not want to live there. Or Three Pines or whatever. I would not want to live there because somebody's always dying in a maybe not so gruesome way.
True, that's true.
I know, that's a
Called
particular,
code syndrome.
yeah, that's a particular problem for me. We have that
Shocking.
and you know, this is the part I love. In Tigger's Code, nobody ever locks their doors or bothers to lock their cars either. And you would think, you know,
With all the brothers.
you would think, but no, they don't. They just go about their little lives, lively unaware that somebody will die this year. And but I do sometimes I try to alternate it and take Lucy on a road trip or something and give people a break. But it is, but I think it's just part of the magic of fiction. You somehow you just will weave your web, you know, and try to just bring your readers in there, and they come along for the ride, and they're willing to suspend belief in that, or disbelief rather. For the 300 pages that you get in them.
Yeah, I think in fiction, in a novel length book, you get one gimme. And that's the gimme. Because as a friend of mine said, if you're gonna tell a lie, tell it fast. Don't justify it, don't make excuses, don't just do it. And I feel like in our mysteries, which tend to be set in closed communities, whether they're in large or small places, that's our gimme, which is there's gonna be a higher death rate here than in Nicaragua. And apparently no one is bothered by it.
Oh, that's in the book in the novella I'm writing now, they actually reference the fact that so many people have died in the first 2 books, where because she's a real estate agent, she's like, how do you feel about dead bodies as a selling point? There's a lot of murder adjacent properties. So I figured at some point someone's gonna notice that, like, she had this neighborhood where like 5 people died. So she's gonna have to point it out.
I mean, I wouldn't live in a community that didn't have a library. I wouldn't live in a community that had lots of dead bodies.
Well, there are people who apparently find this a selling point, so.
Maddie, did you want to add to that?
It's just a fact of life, you know, somebody's gonna die every 3 or 4 months. In Southwick, Indiana.
Okay, all right, I'm good. Well, apparently, you know, we all go back for it, right? So there's something still comforting and cozy about it, despite the fact that we know. I mean, I watched every episode of Jessica Fletcher. I was like, this is, yeah, I mean, she was smart and she was funny, and you know, there was just so much to it. Enough about me. So like we only have about 10 more minutes, and you will have time to have discussion time with all of the authors. So we might not get to a bunch of questions right now, but we will definitely have time for questions with you to hang out with our authors. So because I have lots of questions still, sorry. So what is the appeal then? What is Maddie, you just said like the skyrocketed during the pandemic. What is the appeal for cozy mysteries?
Well, according to our commenter, they put her to sleep. So.
They help her to sleep.
You don't kill people that typically are like main characters, more like a friend and family that you know. If you started doing that, then it would probably be less.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's less good.
Like somebody we don't really know, you know, and.
Yeah, it has to
That's
be
okay.
maybe a stranger who comes to town or some relative we don't. Yeah.
So is that going back to the last question, is that a no-no that you don't kill a well-liked character?
Well, you generally don't kill a regular recurring character.
Leslie, do you?
Well, Miss Tilly is 130 years old. So no, I can't kill her. I did kill off Going back to our dog. Lucy had this dog, Libby, who got old and she just died a peaceful death, you know, it was very respectful and they had a little funeral for Libby. I did kill her. I was just, because I didn't have a dog anymore and dogs just were in my life and I kept forgetting to include the dog and my editor said, well, where's the dog? You know, I said, oh, I'll take care of that.
Should go die peacefully.
It's okay.
It's not murder.
No, she was very old and.
Yeah.
And you know,
That's fine.
yeah, she just, yeah.
She's
But the thing was, what was the
Would you
question?
kill a regular?
I don't know.
No, a regular character, no, I can't, no, I don't think so. I've sort of toyed with it, but.
She does.
No, I just love them all too much, I don't think I can, I don't know. Yeah, and I think it would upset people, so we're still sticking to the obnoxious neighbor or the you know, someone we don't really like.
But I think you were asking about the appeal.
Right.
And I think it's really the characters and their relationships. Especially in a series. I mean, I can't wait to get back to write the next one. Because I write 3 or 4 books a year, right? I'm alternating my series. Yes, I do. She's saying I don't have no jealous. It's my day job. And I treat it like a day job. But you know, I'm writing. It's due Tuesday. Murder at the Rusty Anchor. And then the next book up is Crushed Murder or something. The second book in this series. I can't remember what we settled the title on. And then I'll write the next country store mystery. And like I already missed those characters because I turned that book in April, the last book. And so I think the readers feel the same way. And I know I've had readers say, I have to wait a year. I have to wait a year for the next book because they miss the characters.
Right, and then they send you an email that says, I read this in one day. And you're like,
you know, I had that, just a little aside, Barb's very first book, Death of an Ambitious Woman. I went to her book launch, we were beginners.
yeah, it was 2010.
Yeah, and I didn't have a book out, excuse me, yet. I didn't have a book finished yet. And I went to her book launch and I brought the book home and I ate it. I'm a fast reader and I can finish it in a day. I went, Barb worked for a really long time in that book. I feel really bad.
We've all been there.
So I'm not a fan of the trope of killing someone obnoxious. I'm not big on vengeance and vigilantism in real life, and killing someone because they cut in front of you in the line at the post office just doesn't sit right with me. So I do always look for a backstory for my victim that makes you see their point of view, right? They may have been killed for doing something really bad, but I want you to understand how that might have happened.
Awesome. Leslie, do you want to talk about the appeals of cozy mysteries? I don't think you did.
Oh, no, I didn't. Well, for me, readers tell me anyway, one of the real appeals is my character's family. She has 4 children and they're all grown now and stuff, but they sort of grew up through the series and kind of following my family's, I only have 3, but still sort of following along in that path. And I think that Peter people like to like Edith said, just be with those characters and see what's going on. And then the one that's just out now, Mother of the Bride Murder, that was my COVID book, and it was it's actually set in a chateau in France because you know I was in Braintree, so why? I would have rather. And in that, Lucy's grown kids all get together for a wedding, and that was really fun to write, and because I got to play with the different, you know, rivalries and resentments and things also that they shared and stuff. So that was that was one reason that I did it very mindfully, because I thought they've scattered and I really want to bring everybody together again. So we'll see if people like it. I think it, but I did. It was a very satisfying book for me to write in that sense. There were other things that were horrible. The production and stuff was a nightmare, but the families stuck together. Triumphed.
Well, one I was gonna say, there's also the challenge of solving the puzzle. I think that people want to solve puzzles, they're kind of driven to do it. And then going back to the whole family thing, we used to, in the romance world, we used to talk about series romances, comfort food. You knew what you were gonna get. They're gonna have a meet cute, there's gonna be a little bit of conflict, they're going to get together, happy ending. And I think that when times are tough, you want that comfort food. You wanna know that you're gonna pick up a cozy mystery and get all those tropes that you love. You're gonna get them and you can rely on them. And I think that that's a big appeal.
So with a couple more minutes, I have two more questions. One is, do you all think that cozy mysteries are the stepchild of mysteries, or because we often hear this with like other genres, like sci-fi is the stepchild of literary fiction, you know, romance is derogatory all over the place, whatever, or so like, do you guys think that cozy mystery is like right up there, or is it?
If it's written by women for women, people will put it down. It's really very simple.
Oh, that sucks.
No, and but I mean, I very deliberately I very proudly say that my books are cozies, and when we started our blog, it was the Wicked Cozy Authors, which we did very deliberately to sort of reclaim that word. In fact, now it's just the Wicked Authors, because people are writing historicals, paranormals, all kinds of things. But for me, it's not worth worrying about. If it gives you pleasure, read it and don't apologize.
Thank you. That was a perfect answer. I was going to say that I interviewed a mystery thriller writer the other day as a virtual program, and he mentioned all of these male writers, not a single female writer. And I kept wanting to ask, but we never got quite to it. And I also, anyways, so
and that which is outrageous, because there are some really hot women writing thrillers.
I know.
I mean,
I was shocked.
they're outselling the men, and that's just ridiculous. Just saying.
I will add on that, as having worked in Barnes and Noble, the top sellers were all women. All women thriller writers. The men were not. I mean, except for one or two, it was the women that were driving that genre.
Yeah.
I have an author friend who has written some successful women's fiction, but she's a complete literary snob. And we were having a gathering. There's these four authors who we used to tour around local libraries. You know, there was a middle grade writer, a memoir writer, me, and the women's fiction. And we were around Nancy's pool last week, and Holly said, and she's always calling mystery fiction formulaic. I said, well, show me the formula. Like, it's just the literary fiction snobs I don't have any patience for it anymore. I want to push her in the pool and stuff. Once you drove in anyway.
maybe that'll be in our next book.
Well, that's true, because there's good and bad cozy mysteries, there's good and bad romance, there's good and bad literary fiction. I can give you some titles if you want to buy some books you'll never finish. So it's
also perception, like what you like. You might, I would like something different than Brenda likes. Okay, last question. Are any of your books being optioned for TV shows?
Not yet. I wish.
I wish too.
So I had some early interest like 10 years ago from Ellen Pompio's production company, because she was getting ready for whatever she was going to do after Grey's Anatomy. And then she stayed on Grey's Anatomy for another 10 years. So it turned out she didn't really need this parachute. But since then, no, but cozy mysteries tend to be on the Hallmark Channel, on Lifetime. They are shot in 28 days in Vancouver. They can't have more than 3 sets. So given the amount of outdoors stuff in my books, I just don't see it ever happening.
They've been canceled 3 times. I was shocked.
Yeah, I was shocked too.
Leslie, you?
I did have a nibble once, but I think, well, it seems to me my books, I think I had too many characters, you know, I think the family's a little too large. I think it would be expensive that's my guess. I don't know, because people always ask, why isn't it? I don't know. But I don't know.
I tried. I'm too racy for Homer. I met with the producer and because there's a woman that grows pot. I mean, there are very strict rules at the Hallmark Channel about what they will and will not. I mean, even my even my Harlequin romances were considered too racy. Because they had behind closed door sex, and you can't have that at Hallmark. But okay, so here's the story. One of my college roommates she's divorced, she lives in Malibu, she's extremely beautiful, and she's currently dating the producer of Monk. So I have been trying through her desperately to get him to read The Stubborn 10 Secrets. He ended up reading a different book of mine instead, and I'm like, but I have a cozy. So I'm still working that, but I heard they're kind of on shaky ground, so I have to get it in before they break up. Good luck with that.
I have had lots of readers say to me about my Quaker midwife mysteries, which are like 1889, around then in northeastern Massachusetts. That should be like the next Call the Midwife. That should be on me. That should be I always say, do you know a Hollywood agent? You know, and that hasn't happened yet, but I keep saying yet.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we are out of time. We are gonna go right into our discussion groups after you all have like a couple minute break. And so we're gonna put this in a circle. You can buy books from Aesop's Fable from any of the authors at this time or later, and 2 authors will be upstairs, 2 will be downstairs. The discussion group signing books. So pick your poison. Thank you so much for this. Oh, poison, right?
And there are snacks.
And there's snacks, that's right. So thank you all for the wonderful panel. Perfect. Okay, so you guys can take a little bit of a break. Don't remember who's down here first.
Leslie and